Moin and a warm welcome to the most beautiful chess problems of all time. Today we have a study by Kasparjan from the year 1972. You're white and it's your move. Feel free to pause the video to try and find the solution yourself. You had the chance to pause the video, so let's first take a look at what we actually have here. Black has this dangerous passed pawn that's threatening to promote. And in addition to our own pawns, we also have this knight. The knight should somehow take on the task of stopping the pawn. So let's take a look at the first variation. If we simply play the rather blunt move king to f5 here, then comes g3. The black pawn goes through. And yes, we won't win the game. In fact, we'll probably even lose. That means we have to move our knight here. So let's first look at the relatively obvious variation, knight to d6. Black will play g3, and after knight to f5, it seems like the pawn is just running away from us. But no, we have this very elegant intermediate check. The king has to move. And now we control the promotion square of the pawn. But that's still not the solution, because now comes king to c4. And yes, the knight can't really capture the pawn. The king comes in, and yes, black is simply too fast. He can use these pawns here to distract the knight. The black king captures the pawn, and with just a single knight, you simply can't win the game. That's why this would end in a draw. But a draw isn't enough for us. We want to win the game. And what else could we try? With the knight? Yes, knight to a5 first, threatening black. That sounds pretty good at first. But then comes king to b5. And no matter what we do here, this king just gets too close to the pawn. Now you might think, okay, we've built a little box here. The king won't be able to reach the pawn that quickly. But now black plays g3. And yes, the knight is overloaded. It has to control the d3 square and also keep an eye on the promotion square g1. What happens then? The knight can't really move well right now. If the king tries to approach e2, now the knight has to move to e2 to stop this promotion here. But that's exactly when king d3 comes. And what do we have now? Now you might think, oh yes, black still has something here. But no, the king captures the pawn. And then we have a draw again. So we can conclude that knight to a5 doesn't bring the win after all. Knight to d6 doesn't either. Okay. Knight to c5 is, I think, very trivial. We don't need to look at that. Knight to d8, that's the correct first move. And yes, black has to respond to that. The most obvious attempt is again to march the king towards this pawn to capture it, because then black already has the draw. And now we play king to e5. We block the black king from entering for now. And the knight, by comparison, has managed to get a nice square on a 6 here. Black, how does it continue? He'll probably play g3, trying to run the pawn through. Knight to a6, black's king keeps moving. And now knight to f4. And now we're actually building a nice box here with pawns and the knight. And the advance of the g-pawn is seemingly stopped. But what actually happens now after g2? Or rather, let's rewind one move. We must not get the idea to play d4 here. Because otherwise the pawn will actually go through here. And yes, that doesn't look good for us. But back to this position. Black plays g2. And what wonderful thing do we do now? Yes, of course, not capturing this pawn here, because otherwise, king to d3, the pawn will be taken. Instead, in this position, we have a very elegant intermediate move, which is d3. The king has to react, and since he prefers to stick close to the pawn, king c3 is probably the most sensible try. And now we shouldn't get the idea to simply play d4 thinking, if black now promotes to a queen here, then we just play this move as black and pick up a nice queen ourselves. And should win the game with this pawn. It's actually not that simple, because in this position, if we hastily play d4 here, black still has a better defense. If you can find it, feel free to pause the video again. It's actually an under promotion to a knight, because now we capture this black piece here. And yes, what do we do now? Now, of course, you might frantically try to push this pawn through quickly, but it won't help. This knight will stop the pawn, will sacrifice itself for the pawn, and then we also have a draw again, just like before. Okay, After we've learned that we shouldn't play d4 prematurely, the better move is king to e4, so we protect our pawn. And what happens now? Okay, we know that if the pawn promotes here, getting a queen isn't so smart. For black, the knight comes in. That's why black has already calculated this and says I have to promote to a knight here. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be able to play for a draw anymore. And what happens now? Now comes king to a3. Again, no rush d4. Because after d4, king to c4 would come. And after king to e5, moves like knight to f3 are in the air. And that wouldn't end so well for the player with white. King e3. And what's the point of king to e3 now? Yes. This knight here is really nicely boxed in right now. You won't be able to get it out so easily anymore. And as soon as the black king makes any move, let's say king to b4, then king to f2 follows. And we win this knight, and this knight protects our pawn. And with that, we've won the game. Were you able to find the first move, knight to d8? And did you also recognize this under promotion to a knight as a motif? Feel free to write it in the comments, and I've linked another video for you here with another study. So go ahead and click on it. And then I'll see you again in the next video.